Kyuchai Ikaraku was not a shinobi. He had never wanted to be one. His family had been among the first civilians to settle in Konoha. Before that, during the bloody Warring States era, civilians had no real place amongst shinobi unless you were a noble. But the first Hokage had understood that a village needed more than warriors to survive. So the civilians came. Farmers, craftsmen, traders, and artisans. The Ikaraku came all the way from the Shina province of the Fire Nation, carrying little more than a worn recipe for Shina soba and the hope that a better life was waiting for them here. Over the years, their recipe had changed until Shina soba became something else altogether. Ramen. The man rose before the sun with a stretch and cold water to his face. Kyuchai wore a white tunic and red apron. "I am Chan. Time to wake up." A groan from upstairs. She was not his by blood. He had found her the night of the Kyuubi attack with nowhere to go and no one left to take her. He had not thought twice about it. That was just the kind of man Kyuchai was. The mornings, though, were a different battle entirely for his little girl. "Can't we open later? The early bird gets the worm." Thankfully, the man had set up shop in his house. The kitchen greeted him with the low creak of floorboards underfoot, the smell of yesterday's broth still hanging faintly in the air, and the quiet that only existed in that hour before the village woke. He worked through the prep without thinking, his hands knowing exactly where to go. Their shop was small. 6 seats if you counted generously. Most people ordered to go rather than eating at the shop. Kyuchai did not mind either way. There was something right about a place that did not try to be more than it was. A bowl of good food waiting for you at the end of a long day or the beginning of one. Kyuchai waited for the first customer of the day. It was going to be Naruto. Rain or shine, the boy came in like clockwork for his breakfast, a bowl of tonkatsu ramen before heading off to the academy. Kyuchai always made sure to use the freshest ingredients for him. He still remembered the first time Naruto had walked in 6 years ago. A rainy day with no other customers. Just a small blonde boy standing at the entrance, holding a few coins in his hands. Kyuchai had hesitated because of the Jinchuriki status. But when he looked at the boy's hungry expression, that was not a demon standing in his shop. That was a hungry kid. From that day on, Naruto had been his most loyal customer. The curtains rustled. Kyuchai opened his mouth to call out his usual greeting, but the words stopped. The person who walked in was an armored midget. "What can I do for you, sir?" "Oji-san, why are you talking to me like that?" Kyuchai went still, recognizing that voice. "Naruto?" Ayame came in from the back, still tying her apron, and said the same thing at almost the same moment. Naruto's helmet vanished with a shimmer of some kind of jutsu Kyuchai could not begin to comprehend. Ayame predictably looked like she had just seen something wonderful. "Teach me that jutsu," Ayame said, "so I would never have to get dressed myself in the morning again." "Sorry, Ayame-ni-chan, I can't." Ayame looked appropriately devastated. Kyuchai smiled and looked at the boy's face covered in sweat, grime, and dirt. "Sorry about this, I was just training with Uruka-sensei for the last hour." "That's fine. Now come to the back and clean up," Ayame said, already steering him by the shoulder before he could argue. Kyuchai caught her eye and gave her a look that said clearly, "Do not you dare rope him into tasting your experiments again." Ayame had a habit of using Naruto as her personal test subject whenever she was working on a new ramen recipe. Naruto, for his part, never seemed to mind, which only encouraged her. "How did the graduating exam go?" Kyuchai said, setting a bowl down. "I passed through unconventional ways, but I'm a genin now." That was all Ayame needed. She wrapped both arms around him, squeezing hard enough that Naruto made a strangled noise against her shoulder. "One small step to becoming the next Hokage," the older girl said into his hair. Naruto pulled back, gave a small smile, and turned to the sink. "Unconventional ways," Kyuchai repeated, pouring the broth slowly. "Do I want to know? Probably not." "Are you okay? I'm here, aren't I?" Kyuchai set the ladle down. "Fair enough." For a moment there was only the sound of running water. Ayame caught Kyuchai's eye from across the counter. He gave the smallest shake of his head. Something was off. Naruto always talked about being the Hokage, so what was that quiet response? "You doing all right, kid?" Ayame asked, keeping her voice easy. "Fine, you don't look fine. I just haven't slept." "Naruto." The boy splashed his face again, gripped the edge of the sink. When he finally turned around, the armor was gone, swapped out for his orange shirt, and without the plating he looked younger. He sat down on the stool and looked at the bowl Kyuchai set in front of him. For a long moment he did not touch it. "I found out about the fox." Kyuchai's ladle hovered over the second bowl, broth threatening to spill over the rim. He set it down carefully and placed it beside the first without a word. "A bowl for Naruto Uzumaki." Not for the fox, Naruto said quietly, like he was afraid of what the answer might be. No, Tuchai said. For the champion of last year's ramen-eating competition. The smile that broke across Naruto's face was like a sunrise over a rooftop. He picked up the bowl with both hands and started sliding ramen into his mouth with the focused urgency of someone who had not eaten in days. Tuchai could barely keep pace. What are you two even talking about? Ayame said, looking between them. Naruto slowed, set the bowl down. Tuchai could see it happening in real time, the pull to tell her to stop carrying it alone. It was written plainly across his face. Tuchai quietly set a glass of water in front of him. Eat more slowly, he said. You'll choke. Dad, what's going on? Tuchai gave her his best unbothered smile. Don't worry about it. It's a man thing. Now do me a favor and go to my room and bring my journal, would you? I want to give Naruto something. She looked between them once more, puzzled, then shrugged and disappeared down the hall. Some things are better left unsaid, Naruto. Wouldn't that be lying? Sometimes lying is a kindness. Tuchai hated how true that felt even as he said it. Ayame was 4 years old during the Kyuubi attack. She doesn't remember it, and that is the only good thing to come out of that night. She doesn't need to be reminded of it, not like this. Tuchai could hear the weight of it settling on him. Would she see me as the fox? No, Tuchai said without hesitation. Naruto did not look convinced. Tuchai reached into the prep tray and placed something carefully into the fresh bowl he was building. A fish cake cut and shaped into the rough likeness of a boy with spiky hair and whiskers. Ayame made that a month ago when she heard graduation was coming. She wanted you to have something special, fully believing in you. Naruto's eyes went a little glassy. He did not say anything for a long moment, just looked at the small handmade thing sitting in his broth. Tuchai had known about the Kyuubi for most of that time, and had never once looked at him differently. Ayame had carved his face into a fish cake a month before he even graduated. The math was not complicated if Naruto was willing to do it. Slowly, the tension in his shoulders came down. Ayame came back with a journal in hand and stopped when she saw Naruto holding up the fish cake with a teary-eyed smile. Thanks, Ayame Ni-chan. She turned to her father with an expression of pure betrayal. Tuchai scratched the back of his head. Sorry. Ayame stared at him a moment longer, then reached into the journal and pulled out a small, folded slip of paper. This is a 100 free bowls of ramen coupon from my father. But since he gave you my gift, I'll give you his, she announced. Redeemable whenever you want. Naruto looked at the coupon in one hand and the fish cake in the other. He held them both carefully, like they were something he did not want to drop. Thank you. It was barely above a whisper, but it filled the whole shop anyway. Ayame ruffled his hair and Tuchai set a fresh steaming bowl down in front of him. Eat up, Tuchai said. You've got a whole shinobi world to introduce yourself to. Naruto set both gifts down gently, picked up his chopsticks and grinned. You'd better start on the next 50 bowls right now, Databeo. I've been flying for days, and I have an appetite to match. Neither of them knew what flying had to do with anything, but they had learned long ago not to ask Naruto follow-up questions for the sake of their sanity. Tuchai looked at Ayame and said, Get more pork out of the back. After 8 years of being surrounded by the weak and the sycophantic, Sasuke Uchiha's ambition was finally beginning to take shape. The thought should have filled him with something. Pride maybe, some form of satisfaction, but it did not. It only sharpened the reminder of how far he still had to go. Compared to Itachi, he was nothing. That monster had been an Anbu captain at his age, while Sasuke was sitting here being a genin. The gap between them was a chasm, and no matter how fast he ran toward the edge of it, the other side never seemed any closer. He sat at his desk by the window and let his gaze drift over his classmates. Half of them would be dead within a year of real fieldwork, leaving behind grieving parents and younger siblings who would never fully understand why. He did not care about any of them, but the thought of that kind of loss being visited on someone sat uncomfortably in him. Sasuke-kun! Every day was the same performance of waving, giggling, and the need to be noticed by him. Sasuke let it fade into noise and closed his eyes. He had training to plan for, ninjutsu today or taijutsu. Suddenly the noise stopped, followed by the creak of a floorboard as a heavy thud sounded beside him. Sasuke looked sideways. Someone in full battle armor had sat down next to him. The Uchiha's eyes landed on the shield resting against the desk with a lion insignia engraved across its surface. What clan has that as their symbol? Sasuke thought, looking around the room. Everyone else was wearing the same expression he imagined was on his own face. Who was this stranger? Meanwhile, Naruto felt like a bottle about to burst. 55 bowls of ramen was a new personal best. He rubbed his stomach while noticing the room was far too quiet for a graduating class. "Why is everyone so quiet?" the blonde asked, opening his visor to breathe. "Naruto." "Yeah." The silence lasted a few seconds before someone in the back decided to open his mouth. "You know this is the class for graduating students, right? Not for deadlast who failed 3 times. Naruto's hand moved automatically toward his head. Armband. Many questioned how the boy had graduated when Kiba's voice cut across the room. "Hey, leave him alone. He probably thinks the armor is going to make him Hokage." Laughter rippled through the class. Sasuke watched the young Uzumaki from the corner of his eye. The expression that crossed Naruto's face was not the loud, defensive bluster he had come to associate with the boy. It was one of quiet anger, something the Uchiha had worn every time someone spoke about the Uchiha clan with disrespect. While the class laughed, Sasuke caught Naruto murmuring under his breath, "Don't do it. It's not worth it. Oscar wouldn't want you to stoop to his level." Kiba, seeing that Naruto was not rising to it, decided to push further. He sauntered closer, exaggerating a sniff, then recoiled. "Whoa. P.U." He waved a hand in front of his nose. "Where'd you get that armor, Deadlast? The sewer?" A vein pressed against Naruto's temple. He knew the armor did not smell right. He had washed it a dozen times. It did not matter. The smell of the asylum demon still clung to the metal like it had been worked into the grain of it, and no amount of scrubbing was going to change that. But Kiba was not worth the energy it would take to be angry at him. When Naruto did not react, the Inuzuka's eyes drifted down to the hilt of the Astora straight sword at his belt. His hand moved toward it. That got a reaction. Naruto's backhand caught Kiba across the arm hard enough that the boy felt the numbness travel all the way to his shoulder. Before Kiba could process it, Naruto had him by the collar. "What is your problem?" "Let go of my collar, Deadlast." Kiba snarled up at him. Akamaru barked twice from the corner. Naruto shoved him back and returned to his seat. "This is not worth it." Kiba rolled his shoulder, working the feeling back into his arm, and laughed. "Ha, Deadlast thinks he's tough now. Bit of stolen armor, a busted sword, and suddenly he's somebody." He shook his head like it was the funniest thing he had heard all week. "Bet he grabbed both off some scam merchant who saw him coming." Naruto stopped and knew exactly what Kiba was. A loudmouth who said whatever came to mind if it meant looking tough in front of an audience. Someone who did not think before he spoke and did not particularly care to start. On any other day, Naruto could let it go. People had been saying worse about him his whole life and he was still standing. But this was different. Kiba had not just taken a shot at him, he had taken a shot at the armor. At everything Oscar had left behind, at everything that had been trusted to him. Naruto did not care what people said about him, but he drew the line at the legacy he had been given. While he wanted to beat Kiba black and blue, that was not the knight's way. Precept the 8. On the matter of honor and insult. A knight does not brawl in anger, nor does he raise his fist to silence mockery. But when his name, his order, or the legacy entrusted to him is brought into question before witnesses, he has not only the right but the obligation to demand satisfaction through honorable contest. Let the outcome speak what words cannot. Let conduct in battle answer what conduct in speech has wronged. Naruto turned around. "Kiba." His voice was flat and even. "Outside, you and me. You lose, you apologize for what you said." Kiba blinked, then broke into a wide grin like he had just been handed something. "Oh yeah, fine by me, dead last. Been looking for an excuse to show off anyway." He glanced sideways at the front row with the easy confidence of someone who had never once been told his charm was not landing. The girls looked uniformly disgusted. "Let's go. I've been wanting to put you on the ground since you walked in here smelling like that." The entire class migrated to the windows, pressing against each other to get a better look at the lawn where Naruto and Kiba stood facing each other. "Kiba's going to destroy him," someone said from the back. "Obviously, did you see how slow Naruto was walking? That armor is dead weight." "Dead last versus a clan shinobi." A boy near the middle shook his head. "Someone should have talked him out of this. Would have saved him the embarrassment." The betting started quietly and spread fast, with the odds stacking up heavily in one direction. "I'll bet on the other side." "You're betting on Naruto?" Sakura stared at Ino. "Seriously? Why not? Because Kiba is going to win." "Maybe." Ino tilted her head slightly. "But think about it for a second. Kiba is out there because his ego got bumped. That's the only reason he took the challenge." She paused. "Naruto is out there fighting because something actually mattered to him. So, A shinobi who is fighting for a cause will always be more dangerous than one who is fighting for applause. The one with something real to protect does not have a ceiling on how far they will push themselves. Kiba has a limit. I'm not sure Naruto does right now. The class was quiet for a moment. That's a lot of philosophy for a schoolyard fight, someone muttered. You asked, Ino said simply. Sakura looked at her rival for a moment longer, then back at the window. Hinata also wanted to bet on Naruto, but she could not find the courage to speak out. Somewhere underneath the silence she prayed for the young Uzumaki. Please win. Sasuke-kun. Sakura drifted toward him, tucking a strand of pink hair behind her ear. Do you want to take a bet? Sasuke had not moved from his seat when the rest of the class rushed over. He had simply turned to the side watching. In all his years at this academy, he could count on one hand the number of things that had genuinely held his attention. Kiba rolled his neck, grinning. You see that? He jerked his chin toward the academy class without looking away from Naruto. Not one of them thinks you're walking away from this, except Ino, but that girl's been crazy since the 2nd grade. Naruto calmly closed his visor with a soft metallic click. He raised his right hand in the sign of confrontation. Kiba mirrored it, then he moved. A shuriken curved toward the side of Naruto's neck. Kiba was already charging behind it, his handnails lengthening into dark, curved claws. Ninja art of beast mimicry, claw jutsu. The shuriken struck the pauldron at Naruto's neck and bounced off clean. Kiba's claws found the chest plate a half-second later, and the sound they made was not the sound of tearing metal. It was the sound of breaking. Kiba yanked his hand back, staring at his claws cracked at the base and bleeding at the cuticle. In the classroom, the noise started immediately. Did you see that? The shuriken just bounced off. Kiba's claw jutsu broke. That armor is the real deal? Kiba shook his hand once and reset his stance. A smoke bomb hit the grass and bloomed outward in a gray-white cloud that swallowed the center of the lawn entirely. 2 figures burst from either side of it simultaneously, both Kibas coming from opposite angles. He transformed Akamaru to look like him, Sakura noted from the class. That's the Inuzuka clan's beast mimicry. Man-beast clone jutsu. Kiba taunted Naruto. You could not even make a clone yesterday, dead last. How does it feel knowing you're about to lose to an actual genin who can make solid clones? Ninja art. Shadow clone jutsu. 30 clones popped in a ring around both Kibas before either of them could close the distance. The classroom exploded. How many is that? 15. 20? Where did he even learn that? Are those physical clones? Yeah, they all have their own shadows. Isn't that supposed to be a Jonin-level jutsu? Sasuke leaned forward, wondering how a fight between him and Naruto would go. The armor was a problem against the Uchiha Shuriken jutsu. But armor was still metal, and metal conducted heat. A great fireball would just cook whatever was inside. Sasuke settled back in his chair, watching Naruto below with quiet respect. Kunai appeared in each clone's hand with a shimmer before the entire ring threw simultaneously. Akamaru, dig, now! Ninja art of beast mimicry. Digger dog jutsu. The earth split open and swallowed them both, the kunai punching into empty ground a half-second after they disappeared. The ground in front of Naruto buckled. Ninja art, body flicker jutsu. The squire was gone before the earth broke open. Kiba and Akamaru erupted up from the ground in a tight spinning formation, found nothing but air where Naruto had been standing, and twisted mid-arc to reorient. Akamaru, let's end this. They moved into position back-to-back, chakra beginning to wind around them both in visible currents, pulling loose grass and dirt into slow orbit around their bodies. Man-beast ultimate taijutsu, fang over fang. The rotation built from nothing into a shriek of compressed air in under 2 seconds. A double drill of boy and dog tearing across the lawn, with enough force to throw a divot of earth behind each of them. Naruto's clones moved into a formation, locking shields together edge to edge. A wall of overlapping steel planted into the grass. Fang over fang hit it like a battering ram. The wall formation burst into white smoke with clones dispersing in every direction. But Akamaru and Kiba had lost their spin entirely, leaving them midair with nothing but forward inertia carrying them. Naruto finished his hand sign. Body flicker closed the distance in a blink. He came up with a spinning heel kick that caught Kiba directly on the jaw. The steel boot connected with a sound like a hammer hitting a post. Kiba's jaw did not snap back. It swung, wrenched clean to the side like a door knocked off its lower hinge, hanging at an angle that made it immediately obvious that something had come apart inside it that was not supposed to. The class went silent. Kiba hit the grass and did not move. Arf! Akamaru launched himself at Naruto's leg, biting down with everything he had, his teeth unable to get through the armor but not letting go either. He was shaking in fear, yet planting himself between Naruto and Kiba the only way he knew how. Despite his jaw hanging completely off to the side, Kiba was still conscious. The sight made several students at the window flinch and look away. "Say you're sorry," Naruto said in a calm voice. Kiba stared up at him and spat out, which, given the state of his jaw, was not a good idea and accomplished very little other than pushing Naruto over the edge. The young squire reached down and closed his hand around Kiba's throat. "You think this is funny, Kiba? You think I am playing with you right now? Say you are sorry. Say you are sorry for what you said. Say you are sorry for tarnishing my master's name." His grip tightened. "Say it, or I will end your worthless life right here on this lawn." The killer intent came off Naruto like a pressure drop before a storm. Every student pressed against that classroom window felt it at the same time. A cold that had nothing to do with temperature. A sensation of being somewhere that something terrible had already happened and would happen again. For a single moment the academy lawn felt exactly like the Northern Undead Asylum. Whimper. Naruto paused at the sound. Akamaru had released his leg. The dog was sitting in the grass trembling, his eyes fixed on Naruto, crying in a thin, helpless way. The sight alone melted Naruto's killer intent. All the while, the door to the classroom slammed open. "What is going on out here?" Uruka took one look at the class, Kiba's jaw, and crossed the lawn in seconds. "Naruto." His voice had shifted into the tone that left no room for discussion. "Step back, give him to me." He was already kneeling beside Kiba, checking his pulse, assessing the jaw with what he had learned about basic aid. "We are going to the nurse's office right now. Afterward, you are going to tell me exactly what happened. Every detail." Naruto sat on the bench outside the nurse's office with his helmet in between his knees, staring at the floor. The hallway was quiet except for the muffled voices coming through the door. Akamaru sat beside him. "Sorry it went that far." Akamaru let out a long, low sound, somewhere between a whine and a bark. It was an apology, offered on behalf of someone who had not been willing to offer it himself. "You don't have to do that," Naruto said. "It wasn't your fault." Akamaru whined once and looked at the door. "He had chances," Naruto said. "You know that, right? I gave him chances." The little dog nodded in agreement. Naruto reached over and scratched behind his ear. "You know, between the two of you, I think you might be the brains of the operation." Akamaru sneezed, which Naruto decided to take as agreement. The door opened and Uruka stepped out, pulling it halfway closed behind him. "Kiba's jaw has been treated. It was a fresh break, so the medical nin was able to set it cleanly." He looked down at Akamaru. "You can go in and see him. Once the nurse clears you both, head back to class." Akamaru barked, sharp and grateful, and disappeared through the door. Uruka turned back to Naruto. "Come on, let's find somewhere quieter." The academy rooftop was empty at this hour, the village spread out below them in the late morning light. Uruka sat on the ledge and Naruto stood a few feet away. "Kiba gave me his side of the story," Uruka said. "Now I want yours." Naruto talked, and by the end he wasn't looking at Uruka anymore. The silence that followed was long enough that the boy finally turned to see what was on his teacher's face. "Naruto, I don't want to come across as dismissive, but breaking a classmate's jaw over a piece of armor. Don't you think that was a bit much? It's not about the armor." Naruto turned away. Of all the people to not get it, he hadn't expected it to be Uruka-sensei. "You don't understand." "You're right, I don't understand. So explain it to me." When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, but the tears were already there, and he was fighting them with everything he had. "This is my master's legacy. A knight gives their armor to their squire when they are dying. That's what this is. That's what he gave me. All he had at the end was me, and he gave me everything he carried with him his whole life." Naruto looked into Uruka's eyes. "I didn't break Kiba's jaw because of what he said to me. I broke it because he mocked and laughed at the only thing my master left behind. And I gave him chances, Uruka-sensei. I gave him every chance to just stop." His voice broke completely on the last word. "So go ahead. Tell me Kiba was in the right. Tell me he didn't deserve it. Tell me I should have just sat there and let that dog keep barking." Uruka didn't say any of those things. He just put his arms around Naruto and held on. "Let it out," he said. "Don't you dare stop it." And Naruto broke into tears, muffled against Uruka's vest. The older man held him and let it run its course. When the worst of it had passed and Naruto was just shaking quietly, he spoke, keeping his voice low. "My parents died during the Kyuubi attack. You already know that," Uruka said. What you don't know is that for the first month afterward I didn't cry once, not once. I thought that meant I was handling it. I thought I was being strong. He felt Naruto still slightly against him. I wasn't handling anything. I was just postponing it. And when it finally came, it came apart all at once, and I was completely alone when it happened because I had spent so long convincing everyone around me that I was fine. Naruto pulled back. His eyes were red and his face was a mess, and he made no attempt to hide any of it. Does it get better? It gets different, the older man said honestly. The loss doesn't shrink. You just slowly build a life that's bigger than it. And one day you realize you've gone a whole morning without it being the first thing you thought about. And then a whole afternoon. And eventually it becomes something you carry instead of something that's carrying you. He looked at the armor again. Oscar sounds like he was someone worth grieving. Naruto wiped his face with the back of his hand. I never got to tell him what his actions meant to me. He knew, Uruka said. You don't know that. No, Uruka admitted. But I know that people who give away everything they own at the end of their life don't do it for strangers. He knew exactly what you meant to him. And I think somewhere underneath all of this, you know that too. Naruto looked out over the village for a long moment. The wind moved through the trees below them. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk circled lazily over the rooftops. I just miss him. You're going to miss him for a long time, and that's just what love costs. Naruto said nothing. But he stopped fighting the tears that were still coming, and that, Uruka thought, was a start. The classroom felt different when Naruto walked back in. The way conversations dropped when he walked near them. The way eyes moved toward him and then away. He could read the room well enough to sort them into categories, respect from some, caution from others, and from a few something closer to fear. A week ago this was all he ever wanted. Naruto had spent most of his childhood doing increasingly desperate things just to make people look at him like he existed. And now here it was, handed to him, and his mind couldn't hold on to it because Oscar's last words kept moving through it like water finding the low ground. Live for yourself. Not to prove something to someone else, not to earn what should have always been yours. The world is yours. Do not spend it looking for permission to exist in it. Hey, Naruto blinked. Ino was standing in front of him, platinum blonde hair over one shoulder, holding a stack of bills out toward him with her usual confidence. Thanks for winning me the bet. Sure, Naruto said. She studied him for a moment, her eyes doing something more careful than her tone suggested. I'm around if you want to talk. We Yamanaka know a thing or two about what goes on inside people's heads. Professionally speaking. For a moment Naruto almost asked what had prompted that, because as far as he could remember Ino had never gone out of her way to talk to him. But he found he didn't have the energy to be suspicious about kindness today. He gave her a single nod and moved past her toward his seat. Sakura, who had been talking to the wall that was Sasuke, went completely quiet the moment Naruto sat down. The boy leaned back in his chair, let his head fall against the rest. What do you want, Sasuke? Naruto could feel the gaze burning into the side of his head. You're strong. It wasn't a compliment exactly. It was more like an observation delivered with a slight forward tilt of the chin. Naruto thought about how much time he had spent over the years wanting to hear something like that from Sasuke Uchiha specifically, wanting to stand across from him as an equal. It had been a kind of obsession once. The need to measure himself against the person the village had decided was the top of his generation. He felt almost nothing about it now. He had his own path. You should see me with a sword, Naruto said with a smirk. Sasuke's gaze shifted down, studying the broken Astora sword hilt at his belt. Sakura was looking at Naruto too. The boy had spent 2 years making it very easy for her to know how he felt about her. And now, the thing she had always been able to predict about him was simply gone, and she didn't know what to do with that. For the first time in a long time, the noise of other people's opinions felt like exactly what it was to Naruto. Background noise. Ino's eyes hadn't moved from the back of Naruto's head since he sat down. Your fickle nature is showing. Shikamaru didn't look up from the desk. He had his chin resting on his folded arms, eyes half closed, with an expression he wore when he was paying more attention than he appeared to be. What was that, Shika? I didn't say anything. You said something. I made an observation. There's a difference. He's wondering if you now have a troublesome crush on Naruto, Choji said helpfully, reaching into his chip bag. I don't have a crush on Naruto. Then why have you been staring at him for the last 20 minutes? Shikamaru stated. Because I'm trying to figure him out. That's completely different. Yeah, completely different. It is. Ino turned back toward Naruto's direction. Yesterday he was tripping over himself trying to get Sakura to notice him, and today he walks in wearing full battle armor, breaks Kiba's jaw, sits down without caring about what everyone thinks. She shook her head slowly. That's not the same person. Something happened to him. People change, Choji said. Not overnight, they don't. Shikamaru opened one eye. What exactly are you trying to figure out? I don't know yet, Ino admitted, which was not a sentence she said very often. Choji looked over at Naruto thoughtfully, his hand pausing halfway to his mouth. The armor is real, you know. I don't think anyone's been taking that seriously enough. What do you mean? The Akimichi are one of the only clans in Konoha that actually uses armor plating, not just chainmail. He tilted the bag and studied the remaining chips with the same attention he gave most important subjects. What Naruto's wearing is better than the Akimichi's. The kind of armor gets made for people who go into situations where everything is trying to kill them all the time. The three of them sat with that for a moment. So where did he get it? Ino asked. It looks custom-made for his size. That's the question, isn't it? Shikamaru said quietly. He said it was his master's legacy, Ino said. That's what started the whole thing with Kiba. He said Kiba disrespected his master's name. Naruto had a master, Choji said. Apparently. Shikamaru was quiet for a long moment. Did you feel it? Ino went still. The killer intent. Yeah, a beat of silence. I felt it from up here, Choji said, and his voice had lost the easy warmth it usually carried. It only lasted a second, but it was killer intent that created a hallucinatory effect. Shikamaru closed his eyes. That's as far as I'm taking that thought. Way too troublesome. Ino looked at Naruto again. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered. What is? You're not trying to figure out what happened to him. You already know something happened to him. What you're actually trying to figure out is whether the person he is now is worth knowing. Shikamaru groaned, which is a very different thing from not having a crush on him. Trying to taunt me into dropping this by bringing up some non-existent crush isn't going to work, Ino said. Ino, think about this honestly for a second. None of us have ever had anything to do with him. Choji and I at least crossed paths with him a few times over the years. The Nara paused to give his friend a hard look. You never gave him the time of day. So what changed in the last 2 hours that has you this invested, woman? Ino said nothing. Go back to thinking about Sasuke, Shikamaru said, settling his chin back onto his arms. I'll watch the clouds, Choji will eat his chips, and Naruto Uzumaki will remain someone else's mystery because I have made a personal decision that he is too troublesome to think about before lunch. He has a point. Eat your chips, Choji, Ino said. I am eating my chips, Choji said. Shikamaru said nothing, which meant he felt he had made his point sufficiently and was now done with the conversation. He put his head back down on his arms. Ino turned forward and looked at the back of Naruto's head one more time. Yesterday she had known exactly what Naruto Uzumaki was. Loud, obvious, and harmless. She had been wrong about that. She could admit it, at least to herself. The question was what she had been wrong about exactly. And she found that she genuinely wanted to find out more. What was the mystery behind Naruto Uzumaki? Kiba sat in the corner of the classroom with an ice pack pressed against his jaw, glaring at the back of Naruto's head with focused resentment. Don't tell me you're thinking about going again. Kiba startled and turned to find Shino sitting beside him. A single beetle making its way slowly across his knuckle with the unhurried patience that seemed to characterize everything about the Aburame clan. I wasn't thinking about going again, Kiba muttered. You had the expression of someone thinking about going again. I was just looking at him, with the expression of someone thinking about going again. Akamaru shook his head once. Kiba shot him a look. Naruto only won because of the shadow clone jutsu, Kiba said. That's it. That's the whole fight. Without that jutsu, he's nothing. So your position is that another shinobi who defeated you did so by effectively using a jutsu. It shouldn't even be something a genin can use. And yet he used it. And you lost? Shino tilted his head slightly. I'm not sure that framing helps your argument. Kiba pressed the ice pack harder against his jaw. What do you want, Shino? I'm not in the mood. My Kakechu are behaving unusually. What does that mean? It means they are reacting to something. They've been since Naruto walked into the room. Shino raised his finger slightly, watching the beetle on his knuckle. Chakra is what they react to, but what they are sensing from Naruto is something different. Different how? Shino considered the word carefully. Something that makes them want to move toward it and away from it at the same time. He paused. I have never encountered that particular combination before. You're telling me your bugs have feelings about Naruto. I'm telling you my bugs are sensing something in Naruto that I cannot currently explain. which, given what I know about my bugs, I find more concerning than anything that happened in your one-sided fight today. Akamaru whined softly. Your Ninkin felt it too. Akamaru looked at the floor and said nothing, which was answer enough. Kiba glanced between his dog and the Aburame, then back at the back of Naruto's head. Something shifted in his expression that was not quite his usual bluster. Whatever, he muttered. He still got lucky. Theories spread through the classroom fast and increasingly detached from anything resembling evidence. He's been sandbagging. The whole dead last thing was an act. Hinata ignored the conspiracy theories rippling through the classroom. A Hyuga's eyes will show them the truth about the world. She had heard that phrase her entire life, usually from her father. The Byakugan saw what was actually there and reported back without sentiment. If something had changed about Naruto Uzumaki, her eyes would show her what. She activated it quietly, the veins rising beside her eyes without fanfare, and turned her gaze toward him. Then she went still. His body was different. She had observed Naruto before, enough times that she had an accurate baseline of what his body looked like. The muscle density was fundamentally altered. The fibers were thicker and more uniformly developed than anything she had seen produced by physical training alone. His bones were denser too. That kind of density took years of sustained conditioning to build. Naruto had not had years. Something had done this to him in a very short window, and she had no framework for how. Her eyes moved and found the seal on his back. She knew about the seal on his stomach. But this one was different, more like a tattoo than a seal, but there was a flow of energy inside its geometric structure. Then her eyes found a flame on his palm. Before she had activated her Dijutsu, she had been willing to believe this was a bad day. Everyone had bad days. Even people you had watched from a careful distance for years and built careful pictures of were allowed to have days that did not fit the picture. But this was not a bad day. Something significant had happened to Naruto Uzumaki. Something that had changed the structure of his body and left marks on him that she could not read and a flame in his hand that she could not explain. And whatever it was, it had happened recently enough that Naruto did not have this a few days prior. She wanted to know. More than that, she wanted to know that he was all right. She had spent years watching him from a careful distance, and not once had she done anything with what she saw except hold it quietly and hope he was okay. Not today. I can do this, she thought. I need to do this. She pushed her chair back in a show of bravery for the shy girl. The classroom door opened. Uruka walked in with a stack of papers under his arm. All right, everyone, settle down. Hinata sat down. She wanted to cry. After finally finding the courage to talk to the boy she admired, the world had closed the door in her face. Maybe next time. You're shinobi now. A few of the genin jumped in their seats. Good, at least they were paying attention. The headband you earned is nothing more than a first step. Yesterday you had nothing. Today you have a rank and a standing in this village among people who once stood in the same place you did. Uruka paused, letting that settle across the room. Whether you were first or last yesterday has no bearing on who you are today. You are genin, nothing but genin. Yesterday you were the oldest and the strongest in this academy. Today you are the youngest and the weakest in Konoha. He watched the faces in front of him absorb it. They needed to hear this more than they needed to feel good about themselves right now. Be proud that you passed. You earned that. But remember that you are stepping out of a school and into a world that does not grade on a curve and does not care how you ranked among 12-year-olds. Do not doubt the skills you built here. But do not become arrogant with them either. He looked across the room one final time. Because today you are nothing but genin. He picked up the team assignment sheet. The teams assigned to Jonin instructors are as follows. He worked through the list steadily. A mix of civilian and clan shinobi distributed across each team by a selection process that had more thought behind it than most of the students would ever know. Team 10 under Asuma Sarutobi, Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akimichi, and Shikamaru Nara. The Yamanaka, Nara, and Akimichi had been pairing their children together for years. The combination of their clan abilities was something Hashirama Senju himself had reportedly called without equal. It was tradition in the truest sense, and Uruka had never once expected it to change. What he had expected was for Ino to make some noise about not being placed with Sasuke. Nothing came. The girl was sitting with her chin resting in her hand, looking at Naruto for some reason. Uruka moved on. Team 8 under Kurenai Yuhai, Kiba and Yuzuka, Shino Aburame, and Hinata Hyuga. On paper it read as a tracker team, which was fine. What puzzled him was that Kurenai was a famous genjutsu specialist. Why she wanted 3 sensor and tracking types was her business, and Uruka trusted she had a reason. He took a short breath before the next one. Team 7 under Kakashi Headache. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno. Sakura threw both hands in the air like she had just won something. Uruka did not begrudge her the feeling. Young people were allowed their infatuations. He just quietly hoped that somewhere down the road Sakura Haruno would find something to be that passionate about that could actually be built into a career. And Naruto Uzumaki. Sakura's cheer stopped abruptly. Meanwhile, Naruto was mentally weighing whether he had enough time to travel back to Lordran and accomplish something meaningful before his Jonin instructor showed up. Sasuke muttered under his breath, "At least I got one worthwhile teammate." Uruka looked at Team 7 and felt something in his chest that was equal parts amusement and genuine concern. Kakashi had failed every genin team he had ever been handed, without exception. And now the Hokage had seen fit to give him a brooding avenger, the most unpredictable ninja, and Sakura. He prayed for all 4 of them. Kakashi perhaps most of all. Naruto sighed, slumping onto the table. The classroom was empty now except for the 3 of them. Everyone else had already filed out with their Jonin instructors. He didn't quite know what to make of his teammates. Sakura Haruno had been his crush for years. He had never been entirely sure he could explain it, even to himself. She wasn't kind, not to him anyways. She hit him every time he asked her out. But there had been something about the way she approached things that a younger Naruto had found genuinely compelling. The sharpness of her mind and voice. The way she cared about getting things right with a seriousness that most of their classmates couldn't be bothered with. He had liked that about her even when she was wasting that same sharp mind on the emo. Naruto looked at Sakura, waited for the feeling that used to be there. It didn't come. The same as Sasuke's acknowledgement of his strength. The best of their year by the Academy's standards. A week ago, he would have done almost anything to be taken seriously by either one of them. Now he was just waiting to see if they could give him a reason to take them seriously. Well, how the turntables, Naruto thought, glancing at the clock without any particular satisfaction before standing up. "Naruto, where are you going? Sensei could arrive any minute." "Gotta take a massive dump," Naruto said, watching the disgust move across Sakura's face. "Be quick," Sasuke said without looking up. "We don't want to keep our Jonin instructor waiting." Yeah. If Kakashi was going to show up 2 hours late, Naruto figured he had time to slip into Lordran and be back before anyone noticed. He made his way to the bathroom, checked under every stall to confirm he was alone, and locked himself inside the last one. "Do you wish to use item, Darksign?" Yes/no, the stall filled with light. The warmth of the bonfire settled over him like a blanket while his eyes adjusted. "Welcome back to Firelink Shrine." Naruto spun around hard enough that his hand went to his sword hilt. The crestfallen warrior was standing behind him. "Don't do that," Naruto said, hand still on the broken hilt. "You scared me." The warrior simply pointed to a mass of souls near the edge of Firelink Shrine. Suspended in its greenish light was an apparition of Naruto, preserved at the moment of his last death. "What is that?" "Soul drop," Alexander said. "That's the whole explanation. You die, you drop the souls you haven't used. That's your soul drop from the asylum. But I thought the souls just went away when you absorbed them." "No," Alexander's voice was flat. "You need a firekeeper to use them. The firekeeper shapes them into something your body can actually use. Strength, endurance, whatever you're building toward. Your master didn't teach you that, little squire." Oscar didn't exactly have a lot of time. A silence passed between them that acknowledged that fact without dwelling on it. The soul drop dissolved into Naruto on contact, spreading through his chest the way heat spread through cold hands. Souls, 10,120. Naruto wondered how much stronger he could get with these souls before asking, "So where do I find this firekeeper?" "She is in Firelink Shrine," Alexander said, already turning away. "Find her and let her do the rest." The crestfallen warrior shooed Naruto away before moving toward a nearby well. 2 hollow corpses with small wisps of liquid humanity bleeding from their bodies like steam rising from cooling broth. Alexander collected it with his fingers with a smile. He had protected Naruto's soul drop for the past few days without moving. He had earned these liquid humanities. Naruto climbed up some stairs to the broken church. Its dome was broken at the center with a massive tree directly growing through it. The tree dwarfed the Hokage monument in size, with its upper branches dissolving into the clouds in the sky. The giant crow that had taken him from the asylum sat on one of the branches. Multiple paths branched off as the stairs leveled out, each one leading to a different section of the church. Naruto took the second. The hallway inside was long and cold, light falling through gaps in the broken ceiling in pale, uneven columns. Giant earthen pots lined the walls toward the back. In the middle of the floor, a man knelt in prayer. He's fatter than Choji, Naruto thought. The man was armored neck to toe in layered metallic plating. He held a spiked mace with a shield covered in a colorful design. What nearly made Naruto lose his laugh out loud was the guy's stupid bowl cut. "Hello there." The man's eyes opened, deep-set and cautious. "I believe we are not acquainted. I am Petrus of Thorland." He paused. "Forgive me for being cautious, but I must ask that you maintain a respectful distance." Sure," Naruto said, stopping where he was. "Do you have business with us?" "I'm looking for the firekeeper. Do you know where she is?" Petrus seemingly ignored the question. His gaze dropped to Naruto's armor with the focused attention of someone who recognized what they were looking at. "That armor belongs to the elite knights of Astora. You know it. Are you from Astora yourself?" "No, my master was. He passed the armor to me before he died." Something shifted in Petrus's expression. Not softened exactly, but adjusted. He reached into his robes and produced a small coin, tossing it gently across the space between them. Naruto caught it on reflex. It was copper, old and worn smooth at the edges. The face of an elderly man had been stamped into one side with faded precision. "Thanks," Naruto said, turning it over. "But why? You are not familiar with the tradition, my young squire," Petrus said, assuming the natural authority of a man addressing someone who was clearly in need of instruction. Naruto didn't know how to feel about that. Copper coins are placed upon the eyes of the deceased, to pay the ferryman who carries souls to the bonfire. Naruto looked around the church. "I haven't seen any ferrymen here." "Oh, no, that is a tradition of the people. A superstition of devotion rather than literal practice." Petrus folded his hands. "I was simply paying my respects to a fallen warrior of the Way of White. Your master was of that order if he carried those arms." Naruto closed his fingers around the coin. "Thank you," he paused. "What is the Way of White exactly?" Oscar mentioned the knight's precepts, but he never had time to explain much else. "Is this your way of honoring your fallen master, young squire? Seeking to understand the path your master walked?" "Yeah," Naruto said, and found that he meant it. "I guess it is. The Way of White is a path of devotion, the way of the gods, of faith, of miracles granted to those who prove themselves worthy of divine attention." "Miracles. Is that anything like pyromancy?" Petrus's expression soured like milk left in the sun. "My dear young squire," he said, his voice retaining every courtesy while quietly evacuating all of its warmth. "We do not associate the gifts of the gods with the crude practices of barbarians." "What? Pyromancy is the power of demons. It is a heretical craft, born of the demonic flame and entirely beneath the dignity of any knight." Naruto kept his face neutral and filed the information away carefully. Oscar actively encouraged his pyromancy, had treated it as a tool like his sword. And Oscar had walked the same path Petrus was describing with apparent genuine devotion. One of them was wrong about what that path meant. Naruto had a strong suspicion which one. Either way, Petrus did not need to know about the flame in his arm. "Understood," Naruto said simply. "So these miracles. Can I learn them? I had intended to await my companions here in any case," he said. "So perhaps while I wait I could teach you some miracles. Would that please you, young squire?" "Yep. Very well then. First, a covenant with the gods. What do I need to do?" "You need only accept the light of All-Father Lloyd, uncle of the great Lord Gwyn himself, patron deity of Thorland." Petrus produced a white talisman from the folds of his pouch. "Through this covenant, the power of miracles becomes available to you. Your faith does the rest." Naruto understood approximately 30% of that, but nodded anyway. "By the grace of All-Father Lloyd and in the light of Lord Gwyn, we gather to welcome a new soul into the sacred Way of White." A warmth gathered around Naruto's shoulders, not the warmth of the pyromancy flame. This was like standing in sunlight after a long time indoors. "Do you renounce the abyss, the servants of darkness, and the curse of the Darksign that plagues the undead?" "I renounce them," Naruto said, before he had fully decided to say it. "Do you pledge to uphold the teachings of the Way of White, to serve the gods, and to maintain the bonfires that stave off the darkness?" "I pledge my soul and my will." Naruto wasn't entirely sure what that meant, but it felt true when he said it, which he supposed was the point. The white talisman in Petrus's hand ripped cleanly down the middle, and the pieces dissolved, spiraling outward around Naruto in a slow ring of light. It was a genuinely beautiful and magical experience. "By the will of All-Father Lloyd and the light of the flame," Petrus intoned, "I baptize you into the way of white. May your soul burn bright and your faith remain unbroken." The light settled into him and was gone. Naruto stood there for a moment and decided this was the coolest thing that had ever happened to him and moved on. "Now," Petrus said, producing a new talisman, "let me share what I can. Their ultimate effectiveness will be determined by your efforts and your faith." A system window opened in Naruto's vision. "Where's Miracles, Heal 4,000 souls, Great Heal Excerpt 10,000 souls, Seek Guidance 2,000 souls, Force 4,000 souls, Homeward 8,000 souls, Talismans. Talisman 1,000 souls, Thoralund Talisman 5,000 souls." Naruto stared at it. "Wait, I have to buy them from you?" Petrus smiled with great serenity. "Knowledge has its costs, young squire. The gods provide the power, I provide the instruction. These things are not, strictly speaking, free." Naruto stared at the price of heal for a long moment. "Newcomers get a discount, right, Databeo?" "A promise is a promise," Petrus agreed pleasantly, "and commerce is commerce. The two need not conflict." "What do you recommend I get?" Alexander walked down toward the firekeeper's cage and stopped. No sign of Naruto whatsoever. He looked up toward the church ruins. A faint shimmer of white light was bleeding out from the upper hallway. The specific residue of a covenant's baptism that Alexander recognized immediately because he had seen it before. It never meant anything good for anyone involved. The crestfallen warrior started running. He came to find Naruto holding a parchment. "An excellent choice, young squire," Petrus was saying. "The Force Miracle is widely favored among cleric knights and paladins, reliable, versatile, and demands nothing more than genuine faith." "That's great," Naruto said, still rotating the parchment. "But how do you actually use it?" "Ah, well, you simply sit." "What are you doing?" Both of them looked to the crestfallen. "You are the one who sits by the bonfire," Petrus stated. "Observant," Alexander said, walking forward. "You are interrupting a private sermon." "I am interrupting a clergyman of the Way of White doing business with a boy who doesn't know what he agreed to." Alexander kept walking. "Your order has a reputation in these lands. Not all of it flattering. You dare speak of the Way of White in such terms? Frequently and without much regret." The pleasantness in Petrus's face left. His hand settled on his mace with the casual deliberateness of a man making a point he was not ready to fully commit to yet. "Petrus," Naruto stepped between them. "Alexander is my friend." The word dropped into the hallway and sat there. Alexander looked at the boy. Nobody had called him a friend in a very long time. He was not entirely certain anybody ever had. The crestfallen warrior shook his head and reached out. He took Naruto firmly by the arm and steered him toward the stairs at the far end of the hallway. He pointed up and then to the side. Naruto knew to trust the man who had sat beside his soul drop for 3 days without taking a single soul from it over the cleric who had charged him for stuff, even though he joined their covenant. Alexander turned back to Petrus. The hallway settled into silence. "I could have you reported," Petrus said, "interrupting a sermon of the Way of White carries consequences." "You are in Lordran," Alexander said. "Your church's reach in these lands is roughly equivalent to a strongly worded letter delivered to a pile of ash. That particular threat needs more foundation than you currently have." "I have companions, members of the Order. I am not entirely without recourse, I assure you." "Bring them," Alexander said, already turning. "I have given up on living and have nothing left to lose. Threatening a man in that condition is a peculiar strategy. I would think about it more carefully before committing." He had taken a single step when the air shifted behind him. He turned on instinct, shield coming up hard, and the Force Miracle hit it like a wall collapsed outward. The shockwave expanded in a dome from Petrus's talisman and hit Alexander full in the front. He skidded back across the stone floor, boots dragging lines through the grit, absorbing the impact through his legs and his shield arm until he found his footing again. He looked at Petrus over the rim of his shield. "A holy man," he said, "attacking while another's back is turned." He reached into his pouch and produced a firebomb. "I cannot say I am surprised. It is almost admirably consistent with your order's broader reputation." It hit the floor between the two men and bloomed into a low, wide wall of fire. "You will regret this," Petrus said. "I have a long list of regrets already," Alexander said, a second firebomb loose in his hand. "You would be a minor entry among significant companies. I would consider carefully whether this is the hill you want to die on, cleric. Literally speaking." The fire between them breathed. Alexander turned and walked back toward the bonfire. He reached the bottom of the stairs and looked up toward the second-floor landing. No Naruto, he looked left, right. Up at the landing where he had delivered what he considered extremely clear instructions involving jumping from the second floor to the bonfire. Where are you now? Naruto. Naruto found a corpse on the second floor without any warning or ceremony. It was just there, slumped against the wall at the top of a broken staircase that led up about 4 steps, and then stopped into an open-air room. Is it normal to find corpses in this place? He absorbed the soul and paused to look at where Alexander wanted him to go. The second floor of the church had no place to go other than a large stone opening in the wall that looked like it had once housed an elevator. The shaft beyond it ran upward a considerable distance. The elevator itself was gone. What remained was a hole shape with a tunnel at the base leading downward into darkness. The musty smell made his nose wrinkle, but he jumped down. The tunnel deposited him into the back area of the church, a wide open space ringed by moss-covered pillars and walls. Then Naruto spotted the treasure chest, a grayish-brown chest with a rounded top, reinforced with metal bindings and a weathered latch, sitting against the far wall like it had been waiting specifically for him. Naruto had always wanted to open a treasure chest. He crossed the space in a breath and opened it. Bones. Fragments of bone, actually, reduced almost entirely to white ash and arranged on ceramic plates, each piece emitting a faint golden glow from somewhere inside the marrow like the memory of warmth that had not fully left yet. A system window opened. Item, homeward bone description, bone fragment reduced to white ash, return to last bonfire used for resting. Bonfires are fueled by bones of the undead. In rare cases, the strong urge of their previous owner to seek bonfires enchants their bones with a homeward instinct. Naruto read it twice, wondering if he can use these items to go back home without killing himself. But, how do you even use this, he said. Do I snort it, eat it? He made a face. Gross. He stored it away to think about later and turned around. 4 more chests remained with unknown treasures. Lady Luck is definitely on my side today. The first held a new weapon, a wooden handle with a spiked metal ball at the end. Item, Morning Star description, hammer with a sharp spike on its pommel. One of the more barbaric cleric weapons. Uniquely, this hammer inflicts thrust damage and causes bleeding. Naruto swung it once experimentally. The weight was fine. The balance was manageable, but he would rather use a sword. The second chest held a talisman, similar to the one Petrus had been using. Item, Talisman description, medium for casting miracles of the gods. Standard talisman issued to common believers. Equip talisman to cast miracles. Attune miracles from a scroll at a bonfire. Naruto pumped his fist once as he now knew what to do with the miracle. The third chest made him go still. He pulled out a handful of small red eyes, cracked across their surfaces like something had broken them from the inside trying to get out. They radiated something that made his hair rise up. Item, cracked red eye orb description, a fragment of forbidden knowledge. Grants its wielder access to abyssal realms where only the strongest prevail. The bearer becomes sovereign of the arena, binding all within until their opponent is vanquished. A pale echo of the Darkwraith's true mastery. Naruto threw these eyes into his inventory with a visible shudder and moved on without further comment. The fourth chest was behind a separate pillar. He was reaching for it when something in his peripheral vision made him stop. A cemetery ran along the cliffside. In Konoha, graveyards were arranged in neat rows with maintained paths between them. These stone tombs jutted from the earth at irregular angles and sizes. Naruto looked at it for a moment and opened the fourth chest. He found a metallic object inside, a medallion polished to a mirror finish. The edges were worked in an ornate design with a rusty chain wrapped around it tightly. Item, Lloyd's Talisman description, talisman utilized by All-Father Lloyd's cleric knights to hunt down the undead. Blocks Estus recovery within a limited area. In the outside world, the undead are accursed creatures, and Lloyd's cleric knights are widely praised for their undead hunts. This blessed talisman blocks undead recovery, allowing the knights to fight with impunity. Naruto read a couple of times as his mind focused on the location of these items, the treasure chests, and their relation to the Way of White. This whole stash is a hunting kit, he said quietly. These are not treasures, this is a stockpile for hunting undead like me. The anger came up slowly and then all at once. So that is what this is about. Petrus gets me to join the Way of White, uses me for whatever he needs, and then what? Put me down when I have served my purpose. His boot connected with the chest before he fully decided to kick it. The wood cracked sharply, the chest tipped backward, rolled down the incline, and disappeared over the cliff edge in a series of fading crashes. Naruto stared at the empty space where it had been. "Yeah," he said. "That is what I think of your holy coven, Petrus." He stood there for a moment with the anger still in his chest. Then something quieter moved through him underneath it. "I have got to thank Alexander for saving me back there from that scammer." After calming down, Naruto decided to use the staircase in the cemetery, moving up to the Firelink shrine. Jumping down to the graveyard, it felt like someone was watching him. Naruto ignored the feeling as he walked past a strange sight. A shield resting against a scatter of bones, its face turned upward like it had been set down carefully by someone who had intended to come back for it. He reached down, clack, clack, the bones moved. The shield came up on its own, and Naruto found himself looking directly into the hollow sockets of an animated skeleton. Drip. Something warm hit his cheek. Naruto touched it. His fingers came away red. The skeleton was bleeding, dark wet blood seeping through bone, running down its ribs and off its fingers. The scimitar came around in a wide arc before Naruto had finished processing any of this. He threw himself back, flickered sideways on instinct, and landed between two graves. More of them were rising. Not one or two, every grave in the cemetery was moving, the earth breaking open with skeletal hands reaching upward through the soil. And every single one of them was bleeding, soaking the ground around them until the grass between the markers was dark and wet. Bleed status effect. 69%? What does that mean? The ground shook. He turned to see a 10-feet giant skeleton running at him. Its cleaver was roughly the same length as Naruto. Its eye sockets ran with dark rivulets of blood that dripped from its jaw in a continuous stream. It raised the cleaver with both hands and brought it down. The blade hit the earth where Naruto had been standing and sent a crack running through the stone beneath it. A dozen more skeletons closed from the left. He hurled a fireball into the group. The explosion tore through them with bones scattering outward in a radius of fire and smoke. They began pulling themselves back together before the smoke cleared. He felt lightheaded. Bleed status effect, 90%. Naruto looked down at himself. His armor was soaked. The ground was soaked. The blood of the skeletons was everywhere, and apparently the system treated contact as doing something. He jumped onto the nearest tombstone, then the next, moving across the tops of them in quick succession while wiping his face and hands against the inside of his sleeve as he went. The skeletons below tracked him with their swords reaching upward. "This place is a goddamn death trap, Databayo." He pulled a kunai with an explosive tag and threw it into the densest cluster below. The explosion bought him a few seconds to breathe while the skeleton horde reformed. He needed a weapon. The Morning Star and axe were in his inventory, but neither of them felt like the right answer to a horde of skeletons. As if the universe was answering to his plight, he caught a glimmer between two grave markers. A sword, stabbed point down into the earth beside a corpse slumped over a gravestone. The blade was catching what pale light filtered through the fog above. It was enormous, 6 feet of double-edged steel. The blade tapered gradually to a point with a long fuller running its center. Wide, simple crossguard. A heavy pommel at the base that could crack stone if applied correctly. Jackpot. Naruto landed beside it and grabbed the handle with both hands. It did not move. He pulled harder, nothing. The sword sat in the earth like it had grown there, heavier than his armor and completely indifferent to his effort. The shadow fell over him before he heard the giant coming. The night's sight made it known that the cleaver was already descending, with Death's hands slowly closing around his throat. Naruto's chakra flooded through his arms and body faster than ever. The sword came free. He swung it with the momentum of the pull. The blade caught the cleaver mid-descent and redirected it hard into the earth beside him. The impact traveled up his arms and into his teeth. Naruto swung the Zweihander up in a diagonal cut that caught the giant across its ribcage. It swung the cleaver horizontally at ankle height. Naruto jumped, landing on the flat of the cleaver, pushing toward the giant's skull with the Zweihander raised overhead. The giant raised its free hand to block. The blade broke through it, splitting the top of its skull. The remaining skeletons were still coming. Naruto jumped to the sky. Ninja art. Shadow clone jutsu? The sky above the cemetery filled with white smoke as hundreds of Narutos dropped down from above with greatswords in their hands. The cemetery became chaos. The skeleton horde was thinning, yet the clones started popping. One swing each, sometimes two, and then they were gone. Bleed status effect. 100% blood erupted from every pore simultaneously. A full-body expulsion that soaked through his underclothes and ran down his skin in hot sheets. A quarter of Naruto's health vanished in the same instant. Covered in his own blood, the pieces seemingly clicked into place. The skeleton blood was why the clones had been popping after a single swing each. They were getting damaged by the bleed status effect, as the clones had less resistance to it. Through night's sight, Naruto looked down at himself, standing in the middle of a graveyard soaked black with skeleton blood. His own blood cooling against his skin, and hundreds of skeletons clattering toward him from every direction. This place has a way of humbling you, he thought as a smoke bomb left his hand. Black smoke rolled outward across the cemetery in a thick wall. Naruto ran out, taking the cliffside path down at full speed. The skeletons came after him. "Cannot catch me because you are a bunch of stupid skeletons," he shouted over his shoulder, legs pumping. "You all have ugly bones, Databeo." That was a clone. The real Naruto was using the cloak of invisibility technique, pressing himself flat against a remaining gravestone near the upper edge of the cemetery. The cemetery settled into relative quiet. Naruto's eyes moved across the ground. Soul drops. A shield half buried in the earth near the far wall, a spear lying across two grave markers. He looked at the placement of them and at the angles from which the skeletons had risen. The items were bait while the skeletons were the trap. Who? What? Why? The ground beside him shook him out of his thought. Nope. Naruto used body flicker up the stairs toward the church. "This must be the first path," Naruto muttered, stepping into a hallway that had seen better centuries. Water covered the floor in a shallow sheet, broken pillars that held no roof. The only thing of note was a statue at the far end, a woman seated on a throne of twisted branches. A child held against her chest, her stone expression looking at something that was not there anymore. Weird, Naruto thought, and walked back to the bonfire. He practically fell down the last few steps as he almost kissed the bonfire out of happiness. "Looks like you went through quite a lot out there." Alexander's voice came from his usual spot, carrying its customary absence of sympathy. "Ha! You can thank the graveyard skeletons for that." Naruto unequipped his armor piece by piece and sat down heavily beside the fire. He pulled a water bottle and a cloth from his inventory and began the slow process of removing the blood from his skin. "How did you end up in the graveyard?" "There's an opening in the elevator shaft. Leads to the back of the church and you can drop down from there." Naruto paused, cloth halfway down his forearm. "Wait, that was not where you were pointing me, was it?" "I wanted you to jump from the second floor landing down to the bonfire," Alexander said. "It is a very short drop." The two of them sat in awkward silence. "Anyways," Naruto said, wringing the cloth out, "thanks for pulling me away from Petrus back there. It is never wise to involve yourself with the way of white." Alexander's voice lost what little lightness it occasionally carried. "I have seen too many people, good people, die at the hands of their undead hunts. They dress it in the language of devotion, and the effect is the same. Ha! Martyrs and victims look very similar from a distance. Good thing I helped myself to his stockpile then." Naruto spread the contents of the back room across the stone beside the bonfire alongside tales of the treasure chests. Alexander looked at the collection for a long moment. Then something moved in his expression that was almost a smile. "Good going, brat. That bastard deserves getting robbed blind." "Ha!" Naruto nodded, beginning to clean the gauntlets. "I can't get my head around it. Oscar and Petrus both walked the same path. The way of white produced both of them somehow. Good people exist inside bad institutions." Alexander leaned back against the stone. "That is not a new problem, but did Oscar ever use a miracle in your time with him?" "No. There is your answer." Alexander settled back. "Your master was a knight of Astora, not a cleric knight or paladin. Based on my hazy memories of Astora, the church and the crown do not share a leash. A knight sworn to his house follows his house first." He paused. "Although I will say this. Many knights across the 7 kingdoms hold to the same ideals as the way of white without belonging to it. The devotion and the institution are not always the same thing. Your master may have believed in everything Petrus claims to believe in and still had nothing to do with the man. That is not a contradiction. That is just how it works out here." Naruto nodded, letting that new information become part of his world. Well, he reached into his inventory and pulled out the Zweihander, setting it upright beside him. The blade caught the firelight along its fuller. "At least I got something useful out of the whole mess." Alexander looked at Naruto's arms, which were visibly shaking about the process of holding it upright. "You are going to need considerably more strength before that thing becomes anything other than a liability. It will send foes flying when used properly. Right now it would send you flying." Naruto pulled up the system tabs. Item. Zweihander weapon type, ultra greatsword strength requirement, 24 dexterity requirement, 10 physical attack, 130. He flipped to the next tab. Miracle force uses, 21 description creates a shockwave. Inflicts no damage but propels foes back and defends against arrows. Cleric knights use this miracle when charging into enemy mobs. Faith required, 12. Naruto frowned at the no damage line. Great, looks like I wasted a bunch of my souls on a lame spell. He closed the tabs and looked up. Where is the firekeeper? I went through the entire church and the graveyard and half a hallway full of water, and I never found her. Alexander pointed. Beside the great tree was a staircase that led downward. I must have missed that, Naruto said, and waited for the warrior to come down with him. Alexander had not moved. Why should he? He had made a decision a long time ago about how much of himself he was willing to spend on a world that was rotting at its foundations, and that decision had served him well enough. Other people's problems were other people's problems. That was just how it was. He had only protected the boy's soul drop because a strong hollow wandering through Firelink Shrine would have been an inconvenience. He could have absorbed the souls himself. And he had not because he had not wanted to. That was all it was. The words from the church hallway came to his mind. Alexander is my friend. Alexander looked at the boy standing at the top of the staircase, just waiting for a person they assumed was coming. The simple fact of it made him move before he had fully decided to. They went down into a lower area and Naruto stopped moving. A cage, built into the stone with the permanence of something that had never been meant to open again. Inside it, a woman sat with her hands folded together on the surface in front of her. Her hair was a pale yellow-green, gathered up and bound at the top of her head. A weathered gray cloak draped over her shoulders, its hem ragged with fringe, a chain across the front catching what little light reached in there, small ornate pendants hanging from it. Beneath the cloak, dark sleeves with intricate embroidered cuffs. Naruto looked at her mutilated legs and his chest tightened at the sight. This is the firekeeper? Sad, really. Alexander's voice had lost its usual edge. She's stuck keeping that bonfire lit, mute and bound to this place. They cut her tongue so she'd never speak a god's name in vain. He paused. How these souls endure it I genuinely cannot say. I'd peter out in an instant. Ha, the laugh was short and without much in it. Go on, approach her, she'll do the rest. The woman's eyes came up as Naruto reached the bars. The boy gave her a small smile. Hey, she looked at him for a moment, then held out her hand. What followed was not something that happened in the world so much as within. Everything external receded. His body and senses were gone until only the soul remained. The Darksign at his neck burned white. The souls moved into the dark soul like water finding a drain, consumed and converted by the firekeeper's power. Naruto decided where he needed to grow. Strength. 12 right arrow 16, dexterity. 9 right arrow 10, faith. 8 right arrow 12, the faith came first. It was difficult to describe because faith was not supposed to be something you felt in your body. But it felt like the connection between his soul and the flesh had been reinforced from the inside. The strength followed, and that one was easier to understand. The power that moved through his muscles was almost intoxicating. He could feel the difference in his own strength as the elite knight armor now felt lighter. And then his hands. He opened and closed his right hand slowly. He pulled a kunai from his pouch without looking and felt exactly where the weight sat. He ran a quick sequence of hand seals and he was faster than Sasuke at hand sign speed. Thank you, he said quietly. The firekeeper's eyes widened. Let's go back to the bonfire. Alexander was already moving toward the stairs. Naruto did not follow immediately. He reached into his inventory and pulled out the bento box he had packed this morning. I know it's not much, he said, and bowed his head slightly. But thank you for helping me get stronger. The firekeeper took it with both hands, slowly, as if afraid it might not be real. She began to cry without making any sound at the first bite, with her shoulders moving, tears running down her pale face as she took another bite and another. She looked up at him between bites, her expression saying everything her missing tongue could not. Naruto stood at the bars and let her finish. I'll see you soon. Maybe next time I level up I'll bring you something sweet. The firekeeper nodded, and something in her expression suggested that the visit itself meant more than anything he might bring. Alex, how do I attune a miracle? Naruto held up the parchment, turning it over in his hands. The symbol on it sat above a block of text, dense and small. First, do not call me Alex. Alexander did not look up. Second, I do not know the mechanics of attunement personally. What I know is that you sit at a bonfire, place your hand on the parchment, and if you have the capacity to use it, the miracle attunes. That is the extent of my knowledge. That sounds completely made up. How does sitting next to a fire and touching paper give you the power of the gods? If you want a theological explanation, Petrus is still upstairs. Fine. I will try it out. Naruto sat down cross-legged in front of the fire and placed his palm flat against the symbol, and Firelink Shrine disappeared. The darkness that replaced it was not the darkness of a room with no light. It was the darkness of a space with no edges, extending in every direction without boundary, floor, or ceiling. Naruto floated in it without falling, which should have been alarming and somehow was not. In front of him, drawn in red light, the fireball sigil turned slowly. A tight central spiral uncoiling outward into 3 asymmetric tendrils, each one curling at the tip like a candle flame caught in wind. The longer he looked at it, the more he could see the fireball contained within it. I guessed that the attuned fireball spell, which meant the force parchment worked the same way. Naruto raised his hand toward the dark and tried to will the symbol into existence in front of him, the way the fireball one had appeared. Nothing, he pushed chakra toward it, nothing. He made a hand seal at it, still nothing. What am I supposed to do? The darkness did not answer. He thought about it for a moment and then remembered that the symbol had not been the only thing on the parchment. He had almost skipped past the text entirely because the sigil had caught his eye first. There had been a story, a nameless cleric knight on a battlefield. The enemy line was too dense to break with steel. Rather than retreat, he had prayed for the air itself to push back on his behalf. The gods answered with a single divine breath exhaled outward from the knight's chest the moment before impact. The line broke without a single wound dealt. Men flew. Arrows stopped. The knight walked through the space where the enemy had been, blade still clean. Naruto began to speak it into the dark. The force sigil assembled itself ring by ring as he went, each concentric circle expanding outward from the center point, the short radial lines filling the gaps between them, until the whole symbol held still in front of him, white and complete. You have attuned the force miracle. Kid, Firelink Shrine came back around him all at once. What happened? Naruto, you went completely still. What happened? I did it. Naruto got to his feet and raised the talisman above his head. Force miracle. Silence followed by the distant caws of the giant crow. That absolute swindler. Naruto turned toward the stairs with genuine forward momentum. Petrus sold me a broken spell. I am going back up there right now, and I am getting every single soul back, and then I am going to... The prayer, Alexander said. The last lines of the parchment. You need to say them. Naruto stopped and found the words at the bottom of the story in a language he had never learned and somehow already knew. Oratio vis, via mihi deter frange quad obstat, non ut oxidum sed ut transem. The shockwave left the talisman in a clean white dome, expanding outward across the stone floor of Firelink Shrine. Yatta, I performed a miracle. Databeo? Naruto ran a full lap around the bonfire with his fist in the air, his cheers bouncing off the stone walls of Firelink Shrine, filling the rot and silence of the place with something it had not had in a long time. Alexander watched him finish the lap and sat back down. What are you doing now? Alexander said, fully expecting the boy to finally pick up his things and leave for the journey of becoming the Chosen Undead. Nope. Naruto was doing push-ups in full armor. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run, Naruto said without breaking rhythm. How are you going to run 10 kilometers here? Run circles or back and forth on the stairs until I hit the equivalent distance. The squire finished the last push-up and stood up, picking up the Zweihander. Naruto was holding it across his shoulders for the squats. The added weight made each rep considerably more unpleasant than it had any right to be, and he did them anyway. Across the shrine, a row of shadow clones sat in a line reciting something in low, rapid voices, over and over. What are they doing? Alexander said. Miracle training. My clones pass muscle memory back to me when they dispel. If they can recite the force prayer fast enough, I learn how fast I can recite it, which means I can use the miracle faster in a real fight. Naruto finished his squats and moved into sit-ups. Efficiency? Right. The noise level in Firelink Shrine had reached a point that Alexander found genuinely difficult to ignore. Push-up counts, clone voices cycling through the Oratio vis in overlapping waves, and the clank of armor on stone. He could not tell Naruto to take it somewhere else because everywhere else in Lordran would attempt to kill him, which left Alexander with limited options. He stood up. All right, brat, I want to join in on the fun. Anything I can help you with? Naruto looked up mid-sit-up. Can you also teach me the sword properly? Oscar did not have time to cover much. What do you already know? Basic grips, footwork. Some cuts. How many clones can you make? As many as you need. Alexander picked up his straight sword and rolled his shoulder once. Give me 100. Send them to the flooded hallway in the church. I will teach them there and you will get the memory when they dispel. He looked at Naruto directly. Grip first, then stance, then how to receive a blow without losing your footing. Then how weight distribution changes when your opponent is larger than you or smaller. Then cutting angles, thrust lines, the difference between a committed strike and a probing one, how to read which one is coming before it arrives, how to create openings rather than wait for them, and how to fight when you are tired, hurt. Your technique has fallen apart, and all you have left is the decision to keep going. SIR, yes, SIR. The 100 clones formed and moved toward the church hallway in a stream of yellow. Alexander followed them without ceremony. Time moved differently after that. The physical training ran alongside the sword work without pause. Naruto cycled through the workout, healed at the bonfire, and went again. His body was getting stronger with each cycle. Yet not in any way the system was registering, which he figured out soon enough with Alexander's help. A stat increase was a sudden jump rather than a slow climb. Before his strength had hit 16, he had needed chakra just to lift the Zweihander off the ground. Now he could swing it clean without any reinforcement, and with chakra the blade moved like it weighed nothing at all. He could just hunt for souls and level up again. But stats and physical training were not the same thing. A stat increase gave his body the capacity. The physical training taught his body to use that capacity consistently, efficiently, and without thinking about it. Strength 17 might let him swing the Zweihander faster. But if his shoulders, core, and footwork had not caught up to what 17 actually demanded, the number meant less than it should. Stats built the ceiling. The training built everything underneath it. Meanwhile, the clones were dispelling in steady waves. When Alexander decided the foundation was sufficient, he called Naruto over directly. "We spar," he said. "Straight sword against the Zweihander. Do not try to be impressive. Just apply what came back to you." Naruto drew the Zweihander with both hands and set his stance. Alexander raised his straight sword in a single hand and came forward without announcement. The crestfallen's blade went over Naruto's guard with a simple angle change that the Zweihander's width could not track quickly enough. The flat of it tapped Naruto across the shoulder hard enough to stagger him sideways. "Your guard is too wide," Alexander said, resetting. "The Zweihander gives you reach and power. It does not give you coverage. A narrow blade will always find the gaps if you hold it like a gate." Naruto adjusted and came forward this time. Better, he used the Zweihander's length to keep Alexander at distance, making probing cuts that were more about controlling space than landing hits. Alexander tested the guard twice, found it tighter, and stepped inside the fifth cut instead, closing the distance where the greatsword became a liability. Up close, the straight sword was faster than Naruto could manage, and he took a cut across the forearm before the boy managed to create space with a shove. "Inside distance," Alexander said. "Your weapon needs room to work. If I close the gap, your strength advantage and reach advantage both disappear, and I am faster than you at close range. Keep me out or get out yourself. There is no third option." They went again. This time when Alexander stepped inside, Naruto dropped his weight and turned his shoulder into the man's chest to buy space the blade could not. "Better," Alexander said, and came again immediately before the word had finished landing. The next few hours looked like that. Naruto taking hits he had not anticipated, adjusting and taking different hits while adjusting again. Each time Alexander waited without commentary until the young squire picked the sword back up. Then they continued. By the end, Naruto was breathing hard. His arms were heavy with the accumulated weight of the Zweihander and the armor together. Alexander sat across from him, breathing evenly. A single mark on his shoulder where one of Naruto's better cuts had found something to work with. "You are still learning," Alexander said, "but you are learning correctly. There is a difference between a student who learns from being hit and one who only learns from hitting. You are the first kind." He paused. "That will matter more than the Zweihander does. Same time next visit. Lordran is the best teacher you will ever have," Alexander said, looking at the bonfire. "Every hollow, every trap, and every corner of these rotting lands will teach you something I cannot. I can show you how to hold a sword. Lordran will show you what happens when you hold it wrong at the wrong moment. There is a difference between learning and surviving. Only one of them sticks. But if I need training tips or a spar..." The crestfallen warrior nodded once. Naruto reached into his inventory and pulled out his Estus flask, turning it upside down. Empty. Last question. How do I refill this? Place it in front of a bonfire. It fills on its own. That sounds simple, but I feel like there is more happening than that. Probably, but I do not care enough to investigate. The crestfallen warrior reached into his belt and produced his Estus flask, setting it on the stone beside Naruto's without ceremony. You have obtained Estus flask Exten. Naruto stared at the message. He could sip from an Estus 5 times per flask. 10 meant 2 flasks combined, which meant, "You're giving this to me? I have no intention of using it. Out there it may save your life, which is a more productive outcome than sitting on my person that will not leave the safety of this shrine. But what if you want to go on your own journey someday? If that ever happens, which I consider unlikely, I will take one from the numerous hollow wandering Lordran. They have no use for them." Alexander looked at the flask. "It is fine." Naruto took it slowly, like he was still deciding whether to argue about it. Then he stored it away. "Where do these flasks even come from? Why do random hollows have them? The firekeeper creates them and gifts them to the undead." Alexander's voice dropped slightly. "Unfortunately, most of those undead eventually go hollow. The flask remains. The person does not." He was quiet for a moment. "I feel myself moving in that direction, slowly, but moving." Naruto looked at Alexander for a long moment as his mind flashed through Oscar's last moments. "Promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you will not go hollow." Naruto met his eyes directly. "Do that and I will give you the food of the gods." The crestfallen warrior almost laughed. But the look on Naruto's face stopped him. He found fear underneath the sincerity, the particular desperation of someone who had already lost people, and recognized the feeling of being about to lose another. "I promise," Alexander said. Naruto produced a noodle cup from his inventory, sealed on top compact, with dried noodles visible through the thin paper. This was for Oscar, but he did not mind giving it to Alexander instead. "That is the food of the gods? Try it before you judge." Naruto boiled water with the bonfire and a pot, then poured it carefully into the cup and sealed the top to let it steep. After 2 minutes, he handed it across. Alexander lifted the cup and drank. He stopped. He looked at the cup again with the expression of a man recalibrating something fundamental. He drank again, slower this time, letting it sit on his tongue before swallowing. "This is remarkable," he said quietly. "I have eaten many things in many places, and I have never tasted anything like this." He looked at Naruto. "If this is what not going hollow costs, then that is a motivation I can work with." Naruto gave him a grin full of teeth. He reached into his inventory and produced the homeward bone. "Anyway, this was fun, but I have to go back. Cannot keep Team 7 waiting forever." He paused. "How do I use this?" "Break it while holding the place you want to return to in your mind." Naruto closed his fingers around the bone and thought of Ikaraku Ramen. He snapped the bone. The light took him all at once, and then Firelink Shrine was empty again except for the bonfire and the man sitting beside it, holding a paper cup of ramen that was still warm. The silence settled into Firelink Shrine. Alexander sat beside the bonfire and waited for the noise to come back. It didn't. Minutes passed. Then hours. Then what passed for days in a place where the sky never changed, and the difference between morning and night was something you had to remember rather than feel. Lordran had broken its own cycle long ago, and the consequence was a permanent gray noon that pressed down on everything underneath it without relief. Alexander had learned to sleep by exhaustion rather than darkness. He had learned to eat when he remembered to rather than when hunger told him to, because hunger in this place followed its own schedule and could not be trusted. He had learned to exist in the particular way that Firelink Shrine demanded, which was quietly and without expectation. The problem was that the boy had filled the shrine with noise for an entire day. Now the absence of it had a shape and a weight that had not been there before. He was alone. He had been alone before Naruto arrived, and he had been functional. He would be functional again. That was simply the arithmetic of it. He sat beside the bonfire and watched the flame and did not think about the cup of ramen that had tasted like a world where things were still worth doing. He did not think about it for quite some time. The days that followed had the texture of the days before. He sat. He watched the hollow wander the edges of the shrine without enough purpose left to approach the fire. He checked his equipment out of habit rather than necessity. He considered the paths leading upward and downward but remained where he was. He was not going hollow. He had made a promise. But the space between not going hollow and feeling human was considerable. And he was somewhere in the middle of it, closer to one end than he wanted to be. The only thing that had recently moved him in the right direction was a strange boy from another world. Suddenly the bonfire went out. The flame collapsed inward as though it had been closed in a fist. A barrier was forming. Alexander could see it at the edges of the shrine. He was being invaded. In response, he drew his sword and brought his shield up. White apparitions were rising from the ground at multiple points around him, solidifying into figures, each one armored in the manner of the Way of White. And at the center of them, walking forward with the broad-faced composure, was Petrus of Thorolund. "I did warn you," Petrus said pleasantly. Alexander said nothing. "You are a dangerous undead who has committed blasphemy against the gods and their servants." Petrus gestured at the figures around him with comfortable authority. "An undead hunt has been sanctioned. This is not personal, I assure you. It is simply work." Alexander looked around the circle, 6 clerics with Petrus at the center. The barrier trapped him in the shrine with no Estus flask. He brought his shield up and banged the flat of his sword against it once, hard, the sound ringing out across the dead shrine. The situation brought something back into his eyes, sharp, present, and dangerous. Petrus noticed. The cleric said, tilting his head. "I was beginning to think you were already halfway hollow. That boy must have done something to you." He raised his mace. "Don't worry, I'll find him eventually. Clean up what you started." Alexander let the anger carry him forward. Petrus swung the mace in a wide arc. The parry caught the mace on the inside of its arc. A short, sharp redirect that sent the head of it wide into empty air and left Petrus momentarily open. Alexander's sword came across in a tight horizontal snap, the edge catching the side of Petrus's skull just above the ear. Suddenly, the force miracle hit Alexander from the left, stopping him from splitting Petrus's skull open. The shockwave broke the crestfallen warrior's poise, his limbs locking in the brief, terrible stun. The clerics read the opening and moved. Suddenly, the ground stopped them. An eye opened in the stone beneath their feet. Every figure in the shrine went still, as a blue apparition rose slowly from the earth at the center of the space. It resolved into a bald man in black leather armor, a long spear in one hand and a great shield with an eagle crest in the other hand. Petrus took one step backward. "Patches the hyena, what business do you have here?" Patches looked around the circle of clerics with the easy expression of a man taking inventory. "Oi, well," he tilted his head. 6 holy people of the cloth surrounding one warrior. "I'll be honest with you, my friends, that's not a very good look. Believe me on this one. Greed is a sin. Your own text will tell you the same, and I would know I've sat through enough sermons." He looked at Petrus directly. "Did I not tell you last time we spoke to be less greedy in this life? Heh heh heh." "This man is an enemy of the gods," Petrus said, recovering his authority. "Patches the hyena, are you prepared to be judged under the light of All-Father Lloyd alongside him?" Patches scratched his chin thoughtfully, as though genuinely considering the offer. "The gods are selfish bastards hanging on to whatever power they've got left in this dying age. If they want to judge me, they're welcome to come down here personally and have a go. I'll be right here. Nya ha ha." He planted his spear. "I'm not going anywhere." "Friend or foe?" Alexander asked. "Neither, strictly speaking, mate." Patches settled his great shield. "But an enemy of my enemy is a fine place to start, isn't it? And I do hate watching clerics be greedy. It offends me on a personal level." He glanced sideways at Alexander with a cheerful expression. "Try not to die. I'd hate to have to loot your corpse. You seem decent enough." "Heh heh heh." Alexander said nothing and rushed the Way of White together with Patches coming from the side.